Hello, my name is Eugene Bryce of Bryce Energy Services, and I'm going to give a short presentation on my newish second-hand EV. So about 2 years ago, July 2019, I bought a second-hand Nissan Leaf, and I'd just like to give you some views on my experience and some of the issues that you may find when you buy yourself an EV. So this is my Nissan Leaf. It doesn't actually have my new old electric car written on the side of it, but it's, as I say, purchased in 2019, already about 2 years old, and it had about 22,000 miles on the clock, which for an electric vehicle of 2 years, that's quite a lot really. And the batteries, so most important thing when buying a second-hand EV is what condition are the batteries. Thankfully the batteries were at over 95% capacity, so as an EV is used, similar to a mobile phone or any other battery device, the batteries may not hold as much charge, but thankfully, the previous owner seemed to manage the charging of the batteries and maintain them in a pretty good condition. So 1.5 years, I've done about 7,500 miles in the car over, as I say, just under 2 years. The little cartoon here, our neighbour seems convinced he's going to save a whole lot of money with his electric car, and obviously plugged into his neighbour's house. Yes, the idea is for the electric vehicle, number of reasons for purchasing, and we'll go through them in the next few slides. But the main reason, I'm an energy and carbon consultant, and it wouldn't be good PR to turn up to a customer's site in a gas guzzler. Also, I'm aware of my carbon footprint and I'd like to try and reduce it. So the cost to run the EV, now obviously in the last year we've had the pandemic, and to be honest, the car has been sitting on the driveway apart from trips to the shops and the odd trip to an office. But for the majority of the last COVID period, car has been virtually idle, which is a bit of a pain really, but I suppose not much you can do about it. This chart is from the first year when I was commuting to an office in South Shields, and it just shows the charge cycle and the cost. Effectively, my commute was about 20 miles a day, 10 miles there, 10 miles back, and I found myself charging the car about twice a week. And the range of the car is about 90 miles. So 20 miles, so it works out about sensible. So in the first 2 months of owning the car, so this is back in 2019, 1.3 thousand miles, requiring 18 charges, with total cost £36.70. So what does the home element look like? So I got a pod point when I purchased the second-hand car from the dealer. This was a part of the government scheme, which I think is still operating, where home buyers, so the first time you buy an EV, you're entitled to a grant for installing a home charger. I think the cash price for home chargers is of the order of £700 to £900, and there are a number of different types. I've opted for a non-cable type, or a tethered cable, So you will see, and I think I have an example later, you will see home chargers with a cable hanging out of them, similar to a petrol pump, but I opted not. I thought this was just cleaner, and obviously I'd have a cable anyway with the car. So got this installed in my front of the house, close to where the EV would park up. We also have internally, so the outside wall has the charger. Internally it is separately fused. So the installer put this box in with a circuit breaker, and also the installer tapped in directly after the meter. Now, some debate as to how this should actually be, but if I just put on my little laser pointer, so we have the main cables coming out of the meter, and then they are split between cables to the EV charger, to this MCB, and also the cables to the house, basically. So those are the power cables off to the house distribution board. Now, take a note of this device on the charger cable. Basically, this device, excuse me, it's actually on the domestic cable. This sensor is measuring how much electricity is being used in the house, so the charger doesn't pull too much electricity. So the speed of the charge is variable depending on how much electricity the house is actually using. So if you have the cooker on, everybody's at home using electricity, then when you plug in to this charger, it will slow the amount of charge entering the car. Conversely, if it's in the middle of the night where very little electricity has been used in the house, it will charge quicker, and you can actually select the time of day that the device would charge. So you can plug in at 5 o'clock in the evening, but tell the device not to start charging until midnight, for example. So let me move on. So driving style. I think it's clear to say the Nissan Leaf is not a sports car. Certainly when driven in eco drive setting, which if you've ever driven an electric car, or I should say if you haven't driven an electric car, I recommend you take one for a test drive and try the different driving modes in it. Basically, an electric car uses the energy from braking to charge the battery, and this changes your driving style dramatically. It's not accelerate, sharp brake, it's slow acceleration and almost no braking. You almost allow the car to come to a stop by itself. This can give the impression that you're a rather cautious driver, but equally anybody who is a fan of Top Gear, if you remove the eco settings from an electric car, you could probably outrun most cars from a dead start. It's simply the way that the power is delivered to the wheels, and it can be quite a dramatic acceleration when you really want to. So yes, when driving an electric car, you will find yourself driving, let's say, a little less aggressively. So some of the reasons I went for electric car. Reason one, the relative cost to run over 3 years. So bear in mind this was back in July 2019. So what I did was look at various cars. Typically I go for a 3-year leased vehicle, simply because it was more convenient to me at the time for the nature of work. But what I did was look at a couple of different car options. So a Nissan Qashqai, which is the car I had previously, a new Toyota Corolla hybrid, a brand new Nissan Leaf, and my Leaf basically, or the Leaf I ultimately purchased. So at the time, I operated on let's say a leased vehicle cost in around £300 monthly cost. So working the numbers through, at the time, the monthly cost for a leased Nissan Leaf was in the order of £500, which was significant. So that made leasing an electric vehicle uneconomic, certainly compared to Toyota Corolla hybrid, about just under 300, and the Nissan Qashqai just over 300. So working through the numbers of a 3-year total, so I use the cash price here, so I paid just under 12,000 for the car. So over 3 years, 14,000, so comparable with the Toyota Corolla. New Nissan Leaf was up at 21,000 and Qashqai 15. So continuing the relative cost for 3 years. These are the actual numbers I got from Nationwide Vehicle Contracts back in July or probably June 2019. So for cash price of the order of 25,000 to 30,000, Nissan Qashqai was about 312, Toyota Corolla hybrid just under 294, but the Nissan Leaf was of the order of £505 per month. These are all including VAT. I redid the exercise today, today being, where are we, May 2021, and the Nissan Leaf has dropped dramatically to £225 compared with the Nissan Qashqai, a little over 300, and the Toyota 300. So it's more than halved. Now, whether there's some error or otherwise, but it certainly brings a Nissan Leaf well in line with comparable vehicles. Bear in mind, Nissan Leaf, if you've not been in one, is a relatively large saloon, certainly of the order of Ford Focus, trying to think of another one, Golf size internally. The boot is smaller, but it is it is a large car. So would that have changed the sums on the previous slide? Certainly it would have made leasing a Nissan Leaf more attractive, but for myself, I considered I'm going to drive the Leaf into the ground basically, rather than keep it for 3 years and get a new car. I will be keeping the Leaf until it falls off the road basically, to try and squeeze the asset. So reason 2, 95% of trips within local area. I've been living in Tyne and Weir for over 20 years now, and by luck or otherwise, most of my places of work have been within 10 to 15 miles of my home in Newcastle upon Tyne. So I'm living close to Newcastle city centre, and the journey I'm showing here is to my previous employer, the Energy Check. So you can see here various routes from Newcastle to South Shields, 10 miles, all very easy for an electric vehicle. 10 to 15 miles a day, as I say, charging maybe twice a week. extremely doable with an electric vehicle. So the message from this slide is, do consider what your normal commute is. A lot of people are concerned for range anxiety. As I say, they're worried about what if they can't charge their car or they get stuck at the side of the road. What you need with an electric vehicle, a little bit of planning, but also understanding what is your usual mileage. I've decided that if I do need to go for longer journeys, I'll be taking the train, or we're a 2-car household. Our other car or second car is a small petrol Polo. So I can use that Polo for the odd time I need to go for a longer journey by car. But as I say, you know, the other alternative is to hire a car. But you do need to adapt something for EVs. If you're fortunate enough to be able to afford a long range Tesla, well, your problem sorted. But do bear in mind that charging a Tesla at home may take a lot longer than 8 hours. So it's a balance of understanding what your regular commute is and adapting to that reality. Reason 3, availability of charging points. So I got my EV whilst working for the energy check, and fortunately there was an electric charger at the energy check which I had access to. So I could charge both at home and at work, which is fantastic. And as it's only 10 miles, no range anxiety, I knew I could charge at my destination. This is our local supermarket. So again, there's a couple of EV chargers. I've noticed of late that they always seem to be in use, partly because our local supermarket provides free EV charging. I think in future, when more and more vehicles become EV, this will become a charged service or paid for service. And of course, more EV bays will need to be created. And then again, home EV. This is an example of an EV charger with its own cable. So rather than getting the cable that would come with the car, you just plug into the house cable. Now, you may think you could charge 2 cars from a single charger like this. Be very cautious. The chances are you may be able to charge 2 EVs, but only at half the power. So when it takes 6 hours to charge 1 EV, so from empty, my Nissan Leaf would take about 6 hours. If you had 2 Nissan Leafs off a single domestic, it would take twice as long to charge, simply because they can't deliver sufficient power to charge at both cars at full capacity. So reason 4, mentioned earlier, purpose of an electric vehicle is fundamentally to reduce the carbon footprint. That's why all cars are going EV. So it's a bit difficult to read this table, but for driving 10,000 miles, an average electric vehicle would emit 1 ton, just under 1 ton of CO2. Average petrol car would emit about 3 tons of CO2. Average diesel car, 2.88 tons of CO2. So the idea is that since you're charging your electric car off the UK national grid, half of which is nominally from renewable energy, your carbon footprint will be significantly less than using a fossil fuel or combustion engine. So I have a YouTube channel with various presentations on carbon footprint and otherwise. So if you're interested in learning a bit more about what a ton of CO2 is, please feel free to link to my YouTube channel where there's a similar presentation. So, short summary. Yes, the reasons for buying an EV still valid. Relative to cost to run, 3 years. Availability of charging points, 95% of trips within the local area, and primarily to reduce my carbon footprint. I would recommend and encourage all to really start thinking about how an electric vehicle will integrate into your lives. If you're lucky enough to be a 2-car family, definitely recommend sooner rather than later changing over one of those cars to an electric vehicle, and you still have the inverted commas of backup of another vehicle if you do need to take longer trips. But the infrastructure is growing around the UK, and within so many years, 2035, all cars will need to be electric anyway. So do investigate, do start test driving them. The number of and variety of electric vehicles seems to be growing by the month. So there's plenty of options. Of course, a new electric vehicle is expensive, but when you look into the detail, it is the difference between models of being able to drive 100 miles or 200 miles or even 300 miles, and that is directly proportional to the cost of the car. Battery technology is improving. We do expect and hope for price reductions as new battery production becomes more local. But in short, I've had my car now just under 2 years, and yeah, don't regret the decision, COVID aside, that it's been parked more or less for a year, but I've decided to keep this car till it falls off the road. So I'd much rather a purchased second-hand car than, you know, shelling out 300 quid a month on a lease car that is just sitting there. So I hope that has given you some encouragement to purchase an EV. So if you would like to contact us by email, info@bryceenergyservices.com. You can visit our website, Bryce Energy Services. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, so feel free to follow, subscribe, or lurk. And thank you for your attention, and enjoy your future EV. Thank you very much.